Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie here at First United Methodist, and I'm glad you could join me for this episode. I'm going to treat this episode like it is a Thanksgiving episode of What's Going On because it's being recorded during Thanksgiving week. And so, in honor of Thanksgiving, one of the things I talked about in last week's sermon was about attitude of gratitude, and for us to think about how often do we spend time in gratitude and how often do we spend time complaining. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's a lot easier to find things to complain about than it is to find things to be grateful for. Maybe it's not easier, but it's just what we're prone to do. It's like what we're programmed to do. And so I want to share a story really fast about my time in youth ministry before I get into this. But so I started off in youth ministry in my ministry career. It wasn't my first job in a church. My first job in a church was actually as a church secretary. They really hold all the power. Let's be real. Even in my very part-time short stint in that role, realized if the secretary isn't on board with something or doesn't understand what's happening, nobody does. They are the keeper of all knowledge. But I digress, as usual. In my youth ministry time, I was working with middle school and high school students, and I had one student in particular, and you probably have known people like this in your life, but that particular student was just, it was like she had a program running in her mind that was, I am going to seek out and find everything wrong with everything all of the time. And so it was really hard. It was really hard to be around her. It was really hard to, no matter what activity we were doing, whatever game we were playing, whatever lesson we were learning, there was always something wrong with it, including the people around her. And so it got so bad that I instituted a new rule in youth group at the time. And it was, if this person says something negative about what we're doing, about a person, about anything, they have to immediately follow it up with 3 positive things. And it was amazing how quickly the other students latched onto this rule because they were so tired of hearing the constant complaining. And so this person would say something like, "Oh, that's stupid." And they would immediately be like, "Oh, 3 positive things. What are 3 good things?" And part of it was, I think that student didn't even it wasn't a conscious thing. It was somehow like her brain had just been trained to do that. And I'm not sure why we do that. I think sometimes we will train ourselves to discredit things or to find faults in things because we don't want to be disappointed. Like if we're excited about something and then it's not as good as we had hoped, that's really disappointing. Where if we kind of go in with low or no expectations, then everything can kind of be pleasantly like, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought. But that's kind of not a great way to live in the world. Did it retrain the student? I don't know that it did, but it certainly cut back on the amount of negativity that student brought into the space and into the group. And I wonder if that might not be a healthy activity for us to do. And so I thought for this episode of What's Going On, as we dedicate it to Thanksgiving, to do a little activity. Would you do a little activity with me? All right. And so I just don't think we often realize how much negative stuff goes through our head on a daily basis. And I would like for us to start to pay attention to it and then to start to work against that. Because again, I made a lot of arguments in the sermon about how gratitude is central to our faith, how gratitude and praise to God are really the same things, and how even physically and mentally gratitude is helpful to us. It can help lower your blood pressure. It can help lower your stress. It can help negate things like depression. Not to say that it can cure depression, because depression is a chemical imbalance and oftentimes we need medicine to help with that. But also, if it's more of like a depressive episode, to train ourselves to be able to look for what are things that I'm grateful for instead of just solely diving into what is negative in my life right now, because the negative is always going to be there. And it's not that we're trying to ignore it, but we're trying to switch our viewpoint. My kids have a book called Pete the Cat and the Magic Blue Sunglasses. And in that book, everyone's having a bad day until they put on these blue magic sunglasses and it makes their blues go away. And then at the end, the sunglasses get broken. But Owl says it's not the sunglasses. It's about how we view the world, how we approach things, that we can start to change our attitude, and kind of control what kind of day we're going to have. So I want you to think of something that's maybe a small thing that you complain about. So we're going to start with just really easy things, because I think, well, it's maybe not easy, but it's just stuff that is constantly there. So one of the things lately that I have been really negative about is I am starting to notice gray hairs, plural. And it used to be I would get one right here, and it just kind of pop up and I just pluck it out and pretend like that never happened. But I've noticed lately, especially in the back, there's multiple. It looks like I've got tinsel running through my hair, and I don't know how I feel about that. And I've been kind of complaining about it a little bit. So what can I do about that? One, I can complain about this very natural process of aging and look for sympathy from all the people around me, woe is me, my hair doesn't look the way I want it to. Or I can find 3 things to be grateful for around the reality of having gray hair coming in. So my complaint, gray hair. Blech. Like I said, it's not a big thing, but it is something that's been on my mind. So I'm going to find 3 things around having gray hair that I'm going to be grateful for. 1, I have hair. I am grateful that I have hair. I think I would have a much more difficult time grappling with if I had severe hair loss, if I had alopecia, if I had to deal with any of those things. And I'm not dealing with any of those things. I am dealing with a few gray hairs. 2, I am getting older. And that is a gift. There's a lot of people that don't ever experience gray hair because they don't make it old enough to do so. And so gray hair is maybe a sign of a gift that I've been given in the life that I have. 3, I'm going to say I have not dealt with this until the age of 38. My brother started getting gray hair when he was 19. I think his life was a lot more stressful at 19 than mine, but he has had significant gray hair for a long time, and I have not. I have had other friends who have significantly more gray than me at my age. And so the fact that I am just now dealing with this, that's a pretty big blessing. And to the point of I probably won't do much with it because I'm at an age where maybe I can start to accept it a little bit. So I have gone from, woe is me, my hair is graying, to I'm thankful to have hair. I am thankful to be aging and to experience these things that come with age. And 3, that honestly, I've gone a very long time in my life without having to really deal with it. And so those are 3 blessings around something as simple as having some gray hairs. Maybe you're watching this and you've just had dinner, Thanksgiving dinner with your family, and as wonderful as Thanksgiving dinners with family can be, they can also be fraught with family tension, right? And so maybe there was something said, maybe there was something that was done, maybe someone said something about the dish that you brought, or who knows what it is. But we know that anytime family gets together, it can be at the same time an incredible blessing, but also maybe a little bit stressful. And so let's just do a thought experiment around that. Again, what we're trying to do is take something that we naturally complain about and start to instead vocalize gratitudes around it. Again, the idea is changing our patterns, our mind patterns, and living into this idea of an attitude of gratitude that we've talked about. So let's say, okay, here's one that happened to me a long time ago. I brought peach pie for something. It wasn't Thanksgiving. I'm not that crazy. Thanksgiving is a pumpkin pie only celebration in my book. It was for something else. I brought peach pie, but I used a different recipe than what my grandmother had used for peach pie. I found a recipe for peach pie that had a little orange zest in it. Now, if you know me, I'm a massive fan of orange. Orange flavored, pretty much anything. I am on board. I am with you. That is my jam. So I made this and I thought it was delicious. I thought it was refreshing. I thought it was light. I think it was called like golden peach pie or sunshine peach pie or something like that. Anyway, so we get done with the meal. I bring it home to my parents. I get done with the meal. We eat the pie. Everyone's like, that was really good pie. And then my dad's just being kind of quiet. I was like, Dad, what'd you think of the pie? And he goes, it was okay. Next time, can you just bring normal pie? Change can be hard, right? Change can be hard. He just wanted the pie that he grew up with. He just wanted the pie that his mom made, and that was not the pie that I made. Um, and I remember feeling a little hurt by it, a little like, why can't you just be grateful for the pie that I brought? Or that I make pie at all, or, like, I had like a whole little list of things that I was like getting really defensive about over like a really small comment. Did he eat the pie? Yes. Did he like the pie? He did. He just didn't like it as much as the one he was used to. So let's imagine something like that has happened, where it's not like a huge thing, but it can harbor resentment. Like, I can still tell you about that whole exchange that happened years and years ago. I also will tell you that I've not made that peach pie for my dad ever again. So what are 3 gratitudes? I am grateful that I can have those conversations with my dad because it means I still have my dad. That's huge. That's like, I think about people who say, like, I would give anything to fight with my loved one because it means that they would be there. So I think about that sometimes, that like, yeah, was he ungrateful in that moment? Sure, but I still had him. I still had him. I still have him, but that's huge gratitude, number 1. Number 2, that I was able to not only provide pie, but be with family. I don't remember what that occasion was. It was probably a holiday of some kind. But the fact that I had the ability not only to make pie, which means that I had somewhere to make it, I had resources to bring something. I know it was in my 20s where I was fairly broke all of the time. And so the fact that I had saved enough to make the pie and bring it, but also that I could travel to my parents and be with them. There's been seasons of my life where I have not been able to do that. When I lived on the East Coast or when I lived in Chicago, it was a lot harder for me to be in person with them. And so I think when I think about that, I'm also reminded of the gift of I got to spend every holiday with them at that point in my life, and just how lucky I am for that. So that I have my dad to fight with or to argue over what kind of peach pie is best, that I could be with my family and celebrate those things with them, and that I had the ability to contribute. I think that's 3 already, but let's see if I can come up with another one. I'm going to thank God for peaches and oranges, because also, if you think about it, we live in a time where we can make peach pie. The fact that I can't remember what holiday it was because I can make peach pie all year round if I want, that I don't have to wait for peaches and oranges to be in season to do it because we have all of that available to us all of the time. That's pretty cool. and not something that everyone could say all around the world or at any time in history. And so the fact that all of that has come together for me to be able to just make a peach pie, and again, as someone who didn't have a whole lot of resources, I didn't have to source peaches and oranges from somewhere. I could go to my local grocery store. And at the time I was in Milbank, so like in the middle of nowhere, quite literally. That's how I felt about living up there. And get those things very easily and make that pie. So do you see how this activity works? I think this could go really well hand in hand with the 5 grateful things challenge that was at the end of the sermon for this week. If you kind of are starting to peter out with, like, I don't know, start with what is the thing that I really complain a lot about, and then what are 3 things that I can be grateful for around it. Maybe what you complain a lot about, which I think a lot of people do, is politics. How can you find 3 things to be grateful for around that? Maybe it's things that are happening in the world. How can you find 3 grateful things around that? And to really start to shift our attitude and shift and see the world and to see the good in the world. I kind of like to think of it, oftentimes when there's bad things that happen, one of the things that starts to show up in social media is a quote by Mr. Rogers, of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And it says, whenever there's a disaster that happens, always look for the helpers. And that's kind of like, you can either focus on the negative or you can focus on the good. It's your choice what you focus on. It's your choice what you spend your time and energy on. It's your choice how you're going to choose to view the world. Because if you keep complaining and you keep focusing on the negative or what you perceive that you don't have, you're never going to find the peace of God, and you're never going to find that gratitude, and you're never going to find reasons to praise God for the blessings that you do have, because you're too busy paying attention to all that you think you should have or that you don't have. And so gratitude's really a pretty powerful thing. It can really make or break your day, honestly, if you practice it or not. And so, and especially if someone, like, if you were like, I know I should have a prayer practice, but I really struggle to do that consistently, maybe have a gratitude practice, because again, gratitude is at the heart of our faith. And a gratitude practice is a prayer practice, because it is saying thank you for the things that I have. And it's creating within you, again, that peace which passes all understanding. Because even if there's all these things going around you that are hard or terrible or not going the way in which you want, but you are truly focused on the things in which you do have and the things that are going right, those other things don't have so much power over you now. Your power comes from what you give your time and energy to. And so I hope you give that a shot. Now, the end of last week's podcast, I said that if you are listening to the podcast, you let me know, in the first 5 people, you get a surprise. Well, here's the deal. I had 1 person respond that they had listened to the podcast. Now, I can go on YouTube and see that more than 1 person has watched the podcast. And so I promise you the surprise is a good thing. It's not like, surprise, you're preaching a sermon next year. Although if you want to, let's talk. No, I promise you it's a good thing. And so please let me know. I would like to know who's watching the podcast, who likes it, who has made this a regular part of their participation in the life of the church. And then also encourage other people. Encourage someone else to listen to last week's podcast. Maybe they'll get in on the 5. So I've still got 4 spaces left. This is ridiculous. I offer something good, something positive, a surprise, and 1 person responds. All right, what are 5 gratitudes around that? I'm grateful for the 1 person who responded, and the joy that I get to participate in with their surprise. I am grateful that there are more people watching, and that maybe people felt like I don't need a surprise or a gift to bribe me into watching. That's your attitude, you're sweet, but still, I want to be able to connect with you. 3, what is my 3rd gratitude around this? I am grateful for people like Tiffany, who edit the podcast to make me sound smarter and more cohesive than I often am. And for her not editing that part out, which was really nice of her as well. And she could have responded. Tiffany, if you respond, I'll honor it. She wasn't the one who responded. So anyway, it's just a fun little thing, partially because I want to know, especially if you're watching this and we don't often get to connect with each other, it's an excuse for me to get to connect with you. And so please allow me to have this, would you? I would be so grateful. All right, I hope you have a wonderful holiday weekend. This coming Sunday is Christ the King Sunday. It's the final Sunday in our lectionary year. And then the following week, we will head into Advent in December. How is that already possible? I do not know, but lots of good things happening. I can't wait to see you in worship. Until then, God bless. Thank you for listening to this episode of What's Going On. We'd love to have you join us for worship here at the church on Sundays at 10 a.m. You can also find us online via our website at firstumcyankton.org or search for us on YouTube.